Alright guys, next we're going to go over the advanced mating features for assemblies. So what we're going to do here is just create a new assembly. And this, most likely, your homework over this is just going to be a continuation of what you did last week, so you don't necessarily have to start from scratch here. Start this assembly, we're going to browse and go ahead and get just our base plate in there. And what we're going to go over is U-joint mates, virtual U-joint mates, and then cam follower mates. So just as kind of a setup here, let me go through and just throw in a gear and get that mated just at kind of a random height off of this. Let's make that 0.5. And I'm also going to turn on axes and temporary axes just so I can always get the center of this easily. And I'm going to go ahead and say that that should be centered right over that corner, just to give me a reference on there. It doesn't really matter. Yours will be different in homework. Also, for this U-joint, I'm just going to have to start inserting a bunch of different components here. So I'll need a receptacle. I will need a spider, and I'll also need the connecting rods. So I know already that I'm going to need 2 of these connecting rods, so I just hit control or hold control and then click on it and drag off, and that duplicates that part. And I'm going to do the same thing with the spider because I'm going to need 2 of those. For this, I'm just going to kind of position this other holder out in space. You guys will have an actual spot for it in homework, but to do that, I'm just going to say the center axis of that and the center axis of that one are coincident, and it flipped over the wrong way, so I'm just going to click this flip button and do that. And I'm also going to say that this top face and this face are some distance apart, like 15 inches. So now to go ahead and do a regular U-joint, it really is just about how you design the parts and how you set up the interference between those two. So for this, I'm just going to start adding where these spiders go. Make sure you click check after each one. And really just get everything in position here. That picked up the axis for some reason, so I can go back here and delete that and say, I actually want that face. So that's lined up right. That can rotate kind of vertically there. I just need to do one more of these. Say that the outside of that is coincident with that. And the end of that and the end of that is the same. Also with this, just building up this U-joint, we can see that I really want to mate something to this kind of outside face here, but it's really, really curved. So what we've done is add this point and just be able to say that, okay, now that point and this face are coincident. So it gives us just a flat flat geometry to work off of. And I can also say that, alright, this and this are coincident. But I've screwed up. I've created an extra mate where I didn't want to, so I can go back here, just X out of that, right click it, and go into View Mates. You see I've got that coincident I just created. It's in the wrong spot, so I'm just going to delete that for now, say yes. And I can go back out and say, okay, well maybe I should start with the circular part first, and say, okay, well I want that to be there, that's fine, and now I can pick up my point and my face, and that works out. Just flip this around to where it looks right, and then I just do the same thing for this one. Just pick one of those, say it's got to be coincident to that, and then that point and that face have to be coincident. So now for a U-joint, what it does is it can translate torque, transfer torque, when you don't have a straight axis to go off of. So to demonstrate that, I've kind of made these U-joints that are obviously off at an angle. I'm going to make sure their axes are coincident. And you can see that, once I get out of the mate, this part can still rotate. And the only reason this whole thing isn't rotating is I don't actually have anything locking the rotation between this top green part and this bottom one. So what do I have to do there is go through animate, get rid of that, and I can go through and change the transparency on this. And we've added these little blocks in here just to give us something to mate off of. So I can pick up one face on that, go through, change the transparency again, and then pick up the opposite face on this one. And we just want to say those are parallel. That'll be plenty to transfer a torque. So we can change transparency, get out of that. And now when we rotate this, the whole section rotates just like it had a real universal joint on it. And one good thing about doing these two connecting rods like this is if, let's say, this actually had to be 2 inches higher. Let's just do this. Go into view mates, change this distance a little bit. Let's say that's 17 now. Nothing breaks. Those U-joints are both still valid. The connecting rod's still there. And doing this kind of thing is really nice for prototyping, doing an early version of an assembly. Once you get to where you actually know exactly what you want to do that as one part, you can go to evaluate, click measure up here, and say, okay, I know it has to go from there to there. So it's got to be 12.42 inches. So you it's an iterative process. You kind of have to go through and just try a couple things before you know exactly what you want. So doing little tricks like this can help you out. But let's say you don't want to actually make all these parts and show all this geometry. Let's say you just want the motion of a U-joint without actually putting a U-joint in there. So you can do that just by deleting all this stuff. Don't need the spiders anymore. And we can just insert just a blank bar that we're going to use as our torque transfer piece. And an easy way to do this is just click mate, go to mechanical mates, and they've got this universal joint option down here. So click that and just pick up the axis of the part you want to be the torque transfer piece and the axis of the bottom of your U-joint. And then that technically is a U-joint already in SOLIDWORKS Mind. But we can also define a joint point just so we know it knows where it needs to rotate off of. We're going to pick right there. So from there we can put this at any weird spot, and SOLIDWORKS doesn't quite know what to do yet. It's still not locked down as much as we want it to. So let's go ahead and add another U-joint on here. Pick up the axis again, and pick up the axis up there. And we don't even need to add a joint point on this one, just because we've got the bottom one already. And finally, just to make sure this is completely locked down, let's say that these 2 points are coincident. So now when we look at this, it behaves just like the other U-joint did. We can go back, change the distance on this one. Let's go back to 14. And it still works. Alright, so the final one is just a cam follower. This is the last thing you should need for your homework. If you'll give me a minute, I'm going to do the same thing I did at the beginning and just set up a random gear location. Just mate between there and there, do a distance mate of 1/2 inch, and just say that that axis has to be centered on that point right there. Now we just need to insert our follower part, and this really is just a flat plate. Just say that that hole and this one are in the right spot, and you can see it's still moving up and down, so we need to lock that down too. And actually an easy way to do this is just say that that face and that face are coincident. So what we really want here with this cam mate is for whenever you turn this and this kind of oblong section of the gear hits this face, this moves in and out. So this face is always in contact with this face, this face, this face, etc. So the easiest way to do that is to get it set up close to what you want. Something like this is just fine. Then just go into mate, go into mechanical mates, and just pick up cam here. So we're going to do the follower first, say that face has to follow all of these faces. And just pick up each face around the perimeter of that. And you see it move towards it. It's okay with the mate so far, and it says one or more cam entities has a radius less than that of the follower. In this case, that's okay. It can mess you up if you've got some much more complicated geometry, but we'll just click OK on that and see what happens. So once we've got that done, you can click and drag and move this gear around, and you'll notice that it does follow it, like it's always touching that face.